7 years and 600,000 sold, the Macan has been a phenomenal success story for Porsche. So you would think about now it should be ready to roll out an all-new version, and it will. But this isn't it. So the all-new, all-electric version arrives in 2023. Now the car beside me is actually a third facelift of the current car that was introduced in 2014. That will aid the transition from Porsche from petrol to pure electric power, so expect it to be on sale for a few more years yet. But the question is, has Porsche done enough to keep the Macan relevant to Australian buyers? Let's check it out. So as I said, this is the third facelift of the first generation Macan that was introduced back in 2014. So the headlines are that it gets some design tweaks, it gets more equipment, more power, but more expensive.
Ahead of its launch down under in early 2022, Car Sales has been given an exclusive first drive of the revised Macan lineup.
I think since we're at the front of the Macan, we should probably talk about some of the exterior tweaks, shouldn't we? This particular car is a GTS, so it gets this really prominent sort of black masses of plastic across the front of it, which basically gives the impression that the car is wider. Let's come down. Oh, it's got these side strakes here, which I think Porsche calls them blades. Now they can be available in this sort of matte grey finish or a body colour. Now at the back of the car, there's also the rear spoiler from the turbo, more on that later. And there's also a redesigned rear diffuser that extends further up in the body to make, the car look wider and, well, different from the car it replaces.
Other changes for 2022 include new LED headlamps and a dynamic light system, and a sport design exterior mirrors. There's also 14 colours and a total of 7 new wheel designs.
For the standard Macan, it now rides in 19s, the Macan S rides in 20s, and this GTS, as you can see, rides on these nice big 21-inch black gloss rims. Inside, the minor updates continue. There is a 10.9-inch infotainment screen, there's a redesigned touch-sensitive console, a new gear lever, and a steering wheel from the Porsche 911. All three cars come with Porsche's 7-speed dual-clutch PDK transmission and its Porsche Traction Management, which is basically their all-wheel drive.
For the 2022 updates, the Macan GTS rides on 10mm lower sport suspension, which is claimed to be around 10% firmer at the front and 15% stiffer at the rear.
It's fair to say, since the Macan was introduced back in 2014, it's led its small SUV class for dynamics. And nothing should change in 2021, says Porsche, because it's re-engineered all the models, whether it's the 2-litre, the Macan S, or the flagship GTS we're driving now. So they all have a distinct new chassis tune. Now for the GTS, that includes a new sport suspension that introduces air springs at around 10% stiffer up front, 15% at the rear, and thicker anti-roll bars, and it also rides around 10mm lower. And you know what? On roads like these, you can really tell that this thing is pretty special. Like before, the 2.9-litre V6 twin turbo doesn't quite sound as good as some of its rivals, aka the Jaguar F-Pace SVR. It's also down in power. Things like the F-Pace SVR offers 404 kilowatts. This only manages 324 kilowatts. But that said, I think the performance gap narrows on a country road because, well, just the sheer speed you can hustle this. It's also worth mentioning that the PDK 7-speed, well, it's as good as ever. It's so quick and so responsive. But better still, when you're calming down, you flick back to normal. I think it's also smoother. There's less of the driveline shunt that we had before. It's a really, really good combination. I do really worry about the ride though. On the roads we're driving now, they're just so smooth. so it's difficult to judge, but it does feel really, really firm, which does make me worry about what would happen when you get this Macan GTS on our typical Australian country roads. But that said, Porsche is already ahead of us because it will offer Australian buyers a second comfort suspension. So after a couple of days of driving all the new Macan variants, I think it's fair to say that the Porsche SUV remains as involving as ever. So it's probably safe to say that in 2021, if you buy a Macan, you can be very confident that you're buying the best handling small SUV on the market. I think it's also worth pointing out that even today, after 7 years on sale, the Macan, whatever variant you choose, remains the best looking small SUV money can buy. But there is a sting in the tail for the 2022 updates, and that's price.
While the entry Macan list price increases by a modest $500, the Macan S now costs $105,800. That's $5,000 more than before. Worse still, the Macan GTS price rockets by $17,500 to a substantial $129,800. Another way of looking at it is you get the same performance as the old Macan Turbo, better handling, more kit, with a healthy saving of $12,000.
But I think the important takeaway from today is the updated Macan's blend of its looks, its drive and its increased performance means somehow it's still as relevant today as it was back in 2014. But if that doesn't sound enough for you, we think it's probably well worth waiting until 2023 when the all-new, all-electric Macan will arrive because, well, we think it will look just as good as this car, drive equally as well, be even quicker, have a decent range, and against cars like the Tesla Model Y, I think it will have the competition licked.